boom, chicka, Ballroom Mastery. Welcome. This is Vaughan, the founder of Ballroom Mastery. How are you today? Well, it's been a busy day for me. I've been practicing dancing a lot, actually. A lot of lessons today. And this week, what have you been up to? I got cut off yesterday because I ran out of battery. I forgot to charge completely. Talking about quality versus quantity, and of course, quantity of quality practice, and what that really meant. And so I'd like to revisit that, because I've got a couple of things that I think will really benefit you, and talk about effort, output, and a few things that will help maximize your time. Not necessarily putting less effort in, but really making the time that you put in count. And I'm a big believer of that, because we don't get enough of it. We're limited in terms of the time we do have, and we only get to live once, right? So we want to do it the right way. That's what I've found over my years of experience. And I want to welcome you to these Facebook Lives. Check out the previous ones that are hosted here on the page somewhere. I also put them on our YouTube channel. And I want to thank you for all your comments and your shares and your support. It's a really cool community. It's growing, and we're trying something new here. In the dance world, obviously, there's lots of dancing videos. There's not a lot of educational videos, you know, how to get the mindset, how to create belief systems and structures. And what I would say are the foundations to what propel any dancer forward. Because you can look at external things and say, that person's just a good dancer, but what makes them a good dancer, right? We might say, well, it's technique. It's like, well, maybe it's not just the technique. Maybe there's something that's powering the technique, right? What makes them go and train? What makes them become like a self-actualized dancer? Like, how does somebody go from brand new beginner giraffe-esque dancing, right? Like 2 left feet, and then work their way through and up the scale, if you will, of competitive dancing and become a champion? Like, how does that actually happen? So there's something more than just learning steps. There's something more than just turning up to a lesson. And so, as I said yesterday, and it brought on an interesting comment from some people, that dancing for 20 years doesn't make you necessarily good. Now, this doesn't mean that you should go and become the moral police of dancing and start judging people. Like, that's not your place. Like, you should just be aware that time doesn't equal skill. And it's a real misnomer, because, you know, in careers this happens a lot, and maybe you've felt this before, that you might be in a job for 20 years and then all of a sudden you're promoted because you've been there for 20 years. Well, forget the fact you might not be qualified for it. No, that doesn't seem to play much of a part at all. It's like you've just been there long enough. So in our skill that we're developing, the more that we put in doesn't always mean that's what we're going to get out. Like, I don't always think it's equal and opposite in that regard. It's equal and opposite, I think, in more about the effort that and energy you might expend. And so I remember when in 2011 I was living in England, and we were training. It was a big goal and dream of ours. Alison, who's my wife and my dance partner, and that's how we met, was through dancing. And so when we were over there, I was also, we were training, competing, and learning from the really beautiful coaches. They were amazing to work with. But I was also on the side studying quite heavily, not only online marketing and business, but I was also learning about like mindset and coaching, and I started to do life coaching. I started to get into the realm of like personal performance and life performance, like, you know, and I noticed there's so many crossovers. That's why I do these videos. There's not even crossovers. It's like how you do you is going to show up on the floor, right? Like, so the way that we think matters, right? What we believe about ourselves will show up in our results. And so we have to make the changes at a core level, not a surface level. And I ended up stealing a bunch of traffic from this company because I was also learning, as I said, in the business side of things, how to do online marketing. And I remember stealing a bunch of traffic from YouTube away from them. And this company was called DSI London. And if you don't know who they are, maybe you're living under a rock. They're like one of the biggest dance companies in the world, right? They make 10,000 like products of their own. They're crazy, right? But I was stealing all this traffic, and the owner of it like emailed me and said, if you don't stop doing that, I'm going to sue you. And I'm like, don't sue me. I've got nothing anyway, but don't sue me. And so what ended up happening is I said, I'll take him down. So I took him down. And then he said, look, I was just seeing if you're a nuisance. Obviously you're not. Let's chat. And so I went into the company, ended up talking to him. And I said, look, the way you guys are doing things is a little archaic. You know, like, it's great having a book. It's great printing DVDs. But come on, like 2011, like YouTube's just starting to take off. Like, DVDs are like, they're still there, but come on, who the hell uses DVDs, really? I mean, it's lovely to have a physical thing, don't get me wrong, but come on. You know, you got to get online. So what... No, they weren't trying... Yeah, no, it was a bluff, Jen. They weren't trying to bully me, but thanks for that. What they were doing was essentially seeing if I was a pain in the ass, because there's so many people doing this. And I replied back because, you know, treat people nicely, right? I replied back and I said to them, look, I'm not a pain in the ass. I'm not a nuisance. I was just trying some things, big tongue-in-cheek. I was just trying to see what works, and clearly it worked. And the reply back from him got me in the office. And when I was in the office, I used this opportunity to say, look, you guys can do things better. And we ended up partnering and ultimately created DSI TV, which was the world's first live streaming service for dance sport. And if that's still operating today. In fact, I was over in Blackpool this year, and I was competing in Pro-Am, and my wife got to watch it home on the TV, and I was like, that's pretty cool. And the point of all this is that, well, there's a lot of points to it, but there was one part of this where I got to create an interview. I was big back then even on interviewing like experts. And there was a gentleman called Geoffrey Hearn. And if you haven't heard of Geoffrey Hearn, he's instrumental in sort of pioneering dance sport. This is what he's done as a contribution. So ballroom dancing, is a very quick history, became a thing that people taught because a gentleman called Alex Moore standardized the technique. So in the 30s, I think it was, there was Arthur Murray originally, and then there's a sort of Alex Moore, sort of the 30s, 40s, 50s, and onwards, started to write something called the letter service. The letter service was basically like what I do here in written form, or what I do with Ballroom Mastery Blueprint. Check it out if you haven't seen it, where I'll do like a weekly lesson and send it to you. And essentially it was like, here are the latest steps. And you got them on a piece of paper as a teacher, and you'd see them written out, and you'd see little drawings, and you'd be like, oh, cool. Oh, the whisk. All right, I'll teach the whisk. And so you'd get these every month, and you'd learn the latest steps. Alex Moore then, and of course, what I think they're called the British Dance Council. Don't quote me on that, but I think it was a formula of like the British Dance Council. Basically, I like to think of it as the Knights of the Dance Table. It's like a bunch of Yodas got together in a room, and they sat there and went, oh, what are you teaching over there? Oh, yes, I'm teaching the whirligig. Oh, what are you teaching over there? Oh, I'm doing something called the fall-away whisk. It's rather lovely. And then so, you know, you got all these dudes going like, they're teaching all different things, and Alex Moore pieced together what would become the standardized technique, which is what you do if you do any ballroom class anywhere in the world. You see any competing competitions, or you see American Smooth. It came from that way back in the mid-19th century. All right, so what ended up happening is Alex Moore obviously got older, and my coach Penny, by the way, learnt from Alex Moore for 10 years, right, in London. So her technique, man, she was so strong on it. That's who we learnt from for like 15 years, right? So we're proud to be part of that lineage. And so what I found was, I got to England. As I learnt about this thing, I went, what happened to Alex Moore? Well, he got older and he's died, and someone had to take over it. So Geoffrey Hearn took over the letter service back in the 80s. At that point, I think him and Peggy Spencer started to create a little company where they would send these out. They would start to send out these updated versions of steps, and every month, Geoffrey Hearn would create ultimately something called The Choreographer, which was a DVD that would then be sent out to teachers, and Penny subscribed to it, and most teachers get these, and you can still buy them from DSI, so check them out. But they would be like latest updates or steps or how you can create unique combinations and keeping up with trends and fads in dancing. And so Geoffrey Hearn passed away, sadly, a couple of years ago, but I interviewed him, right? And I found out not only about this history, but you know, for 30 years he was doing these videos, and so he has been instrumental in dance sport. The reason you and I think can even talk about dance sport or dancing or ballroom dancing is because of what contribution someone like Geoffrey and Alex Moore have made, right? And they've propelled it in a way that's phenomenal. Really, true genius work. And so when I was interviewing him, I was talking to him about practice, because he ran some very large studios in England, and he said, oh yes, I hate it when students or pupils come into the studio and they are there for 3 hours, right? They come in, all they do is chat, they barely dance, and then they leave. And they think that's practice. And I went, wow, that's so true. And he goes, no, the best thing that you and I can do is to practice and get out. It's like do an hour and then get out. And then if I parlay this with like Olympic level sport, you can't physically and mentally train really intensely and properly for really longer than 45 minutes to an hour at max anyway. Right? So like there's no point being in the studio for 3 hours. So this is one of the things I'm saying, is that if we loop it all together, being in the studio for 3 hours a day, 5 days a week, you'd say that's 15 hours of dancing. It's not really. It's a way of you kidding yourself, thinking you're training hard. And that's if you do that much, right? You might not. You might do 3 hours a week. But are you really doing 3 hours? I mean, you got to be honest. Probably not. And so what ends up happening is you string that together and you think, well, I dance every week. Maybe you don't. You probably dance 48 weeks a year. So you got time there you're not dancing. Maybe you dance 30 weeks a year, but you think you're dancing for a full year and you're not. And so 20 years adds up and you haven't actually accumulated a lot of time. And if you have accumulated a lot of time, a lot of it hasn't been very well used. And so there is definitely a methodology to the way you use your time when you go to the studio. In a previous video, I did a practice layout, like a 7-step framework you can use. Check it out, like it's really valuable because it puts all this together and like, well, okay, what do I do with this information? Well, follow the 7 steps and you'll practice really, really well in a short period of time. And that will move you faster than just staying in the studio for hours on end. I hope you're starting to understand how this all comes together. So that conversation was really fascinating with Geoffrey because he was like, essentially illuminating something that I think we all know, but we just need reminders, right? We need to know how we can connect things. And I guess ultimately we have to be able to take, looking at partnering DSI and how that formulated and worked out and went forward, you have to have the right attitude and mindset whenever you're doing any of this. If you want to practice well, the right attitude has to be there. If people are giving you grief on the dance floor, you've got to have the right attitude. If I told you the truth about some of the stuff that happened to us in politics, we got banned from dancing, right? Like we were banned from competing because for no other reason than the politics of dance, which are absolutely crazy. So we stay away from that. And I encourage you to not worry about that. Like not worry about what other people are doing. It's not your business what they think of you anyway. And unless, you want to know, then ask them. But it's not your business really. Focus on you. Like do you. Get the best version of you cranking, right? Like get that cranking because you're going to feel more joy then. You're going to feel more vibrancy for life. You're going to feel more enthusiasm. You're going to enjoy your results because you're going to dance better. It's like you'll be a master of what you do. And I think that's the goal, right? Isn't that what you want? Let me know. Give me a like and share. Go, that's what I want. So what you can do as a takeaway from this, assess how you're using your time in the studio well. Don't be panicked. Don't operate from a place of fear. But when you're there, do the work you're there to do. Do it with intensity, right? Do it with focus. Do it with concentration. Chat if you must, but, keep it short and then off you go. Don't be an arsehole. Be nice, right? Like, you're not God's gift to dance. Just be nice. No matter how good you get, there's always someone trying to chase you and be better. So maybe in a later video, I'll make a video about the difference between social dancing and competitive dancing. They're two different worlds in a way. But I have found social dancers can be a little bit more, how do you say, egocentric in a way, a different type of egocentric. So anyways, listen, thank you for coming in today. Thank you, Jen, and thank you to everyone who commented, liked, and shared. I hope this has meant something to you, and let me know what you got from it. Let me know what else you'd like. I think in the next video, I'm going to bring something about partnering, how to find the right partners, what to look for, what to know up front and in advance before you commit all the time and money, because it's different, right? I often say in the studio, no matter where you are in the world, there's a man famine. There's also women starvation, right? Like on both sides of the equation, wherever you go, it's very difficult to find the right partner. So I want you to tune into that, like the page, share it, make sure you get the notifications first whenever I'm on. I'll answer your question. So let me know what you're struggling with. I'm here to guide you, be your mentor, be your virtual coach. And one last thing, please stay with me for this. I'm very excited to announce Ballroom Mastery Academy is coming out soon. Give me a boom below if this is something you'd like to know about. But I'd love to work with you in a more intimate setting, not on a public forum like this, where you can ask me direct questions, where I can teach you actual dancing, like steps, technique, choreography. And I mean like real good level choreography and technique, I should say. That was a terrible pitch. But what I mean is I love teaching, right? I love what I do. I love to share my knowledge, and I know it'll work for you. So if that's something that's interesting, let me know. In the meantime, I love that, Helen. Just walk into the studio with the intention of walking out better than when you walked in. You know what? That's it. That's it. If you're doing that, congratulations. That's the trick. Having that every time you go in, that's the goal. All right, listen. Thanks, everybody. Rock it out. And remember, we're going to master the art of ballroom dancing. Have a wonderful day.